Syria, 48 BC. You are 21 years old. Your own brother, the boy you were legally required to marry, has just had you expelled from your own kingdom at sword point. No palace, no court, no treasury, no army. You have a tent, a border, and a map of the most powerful empire on earth. And you are not running. You are building an army. Everything you know about Cleopatra came from her enemies. Caesar mentioned her in passing. Plutarch wrote her most famous biography 150 years after she died, using sources that hated her. Shakespeare based his Cleopatra on Plutarch. Hollywood based theirs on Shakespeare. The most famous woman from the ancient world has been filtered through 2,000 years of people who needed her to be a particular kind of story. She wasn't. 9 languages. First in her dynasty to learn Egyptian. 300 years of rulers. She was the first. A collapsing empire. The most powerful military machine in human history. She held it together for 21 years. She didn't fall because of passion. She made one political miscalculation. And in 60 seconds, I'll show you exactly what it was, and why Rome needed to make sure you never heard this version. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is the version Rome spent 2,000 years burying. Here is the problem that has buried Cleopatra's real story for 2,000 years. She was the loser. In the ancient world, the loser's story is told by the winner. Octavian won. He became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He had the most powerful propaganda machine in human history at his disposal. The poets, Horace, Virgil, Propertius, all writing within years of her death, all saying the same thing. The degraded foreign queen, the Eastern temptress, the woman who bewitched great Roman men with unnatural powers and nearly brought down the Republic. Not one word about the 9 languages. Not one word about the economic administration. Not one word about the woman who was the last ruler of the most ancient civilization on Earth, who actually governed it in its own language. That story was buried with her, and we are going to dig it up. But to understand why Cleopatra was so dangerous enough that Rome spent 2,000 years making sure you'd remember her a certain way, you'd have to understand what she was born into. Because the Egypt she inherited was not the Egypt we've been covering in this series. It was something far more precarious, and what she did with it should stop you. Cleopatra's family, the Ptolemaic dynasty, had ruled Egypt since 323 BC, when Alexander's general Ptolemy seized it after Alexander died. 300 years, the longest-running Greek dynasty in history. And in 300 years, not a single one of them had learnt Egyptian. They ruled from Alexandria. They held court in Greek. They sent official documents in Greek. They married their siblings, brother to sister, generation after generation, to keep the bloodline pure and the power internal. They were efficient landlords of the most fertile country in the ancient world, and they treated it like a property portfolio. By the time Cleopatra was born in 69 BC, that property portfolio was mortgaged to Rome. Her father, Ptolemy XII, had been expelled by his own people. He went to Rome, paid a colossal bribe, thousands of talents of silver to get Roman military backing to retake his throne. He got it. Egypt got the debt. Cleopatra inherited that debt at 18, co-ruling with her 10-year-old brother, whom she was legally required to marry. Within 3 years, her brother's advisors had exiled her at sword point. She raised an army in Syria, and then Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria, chasing his rival Pompey. The story you know, rolled up in a carpet, smuggled in, charm offensive, love affair, throne restored. The story the evidence supports, a calculated political decision by an extremely intelligent woman who understood one thing with absolute clarity. Egyptian survival depended entirely on Roman patronage, and personal access to the most powerful Roman alive was the only leverage she had. Was there a relationship? Almost certainly. It was primarily romantic. The evidence for that is thin. Caesar was in Egypt for 9 months, the longest he stayed anywhere during his entire career. He left when Cleopatra was pregnant with his son, Caesarion. He went back home to Rome and never returned. He did, however, cancel Egypt's debt, and he backed her claim to the throne. After Caesar was assassinated, Cleopatra had a decision to make, and what she decided to do next was not a love story. It was one of the most ambitious geopolitical projects of the ancient world. Stay with me, because this is the part that Rome absolutely did not want you to know. 2 men divided the Roman world after Caesar's death. Octavian took the west, Mark Antony took the east, which meant he controlled Egypt's region. The logic was identical to Caesar: align with the dominant Eastern power, survive. But Cleopatra didn't just seek an alliance. She proposed something genuinely radical. A new empire, Eastern-centered, Alexandria as its capital, combining Roman military power with Egyptian wealth, legitimized by a fusion of Roman and Egyptian divine mythology. She and Antony depicted on coins as Isis and Osiris, as divine co-rulers of a world order that put Rome in the west and the east under Alexandria. She had 3 children with Antony. He donated territories to Egypt, Cyprus, Cyrene, parts of Syria. The Roman Senate was furious. Octavian framed it brilliantly. He declared war not on Antony, which would have been a Roman civil war, but on Cleopatra, a foreign queen, a threat to Rome, an Eastern sorceress who had corrupted a great general. The framing was a masterpiece. At the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, everything came down to one decision. And for 2,000 years, historians have argued about whether what Cleopatra did in the battle was a catastrophic mistake or the most cold-blooded strategic calculation of her life. I'll show you both sides. But first, the detail about her death that changes everything. Actium 31 BC. The combined fleet of Antony and Cleopatra against Octavian's forces. During the battle, Cleopatra's ships withdrew. Antony followed. The battle was lost. Why did she withdraw? Military failure? Treachery? A prearranged escape plan that Antony broke by following? The ancient sources disagree. The modern historians disagree. We don't know. What we know is that within a year, Antony was dead and Cleopatra was Octavian's prisoner. Octavian wanted to take her to Rome, to display her in chains in his triumph parade, the ultimate public humiliation a Roman general could inflict on a defeated enemy. He had done this before. He intended to do it with her. Now here's the deal about her death. Cleopatra had spent years studying poison scientifically. Multiple ancient sources recorded that she conducted experiments on prisoners to understand which methods worked fastest and caused the least suffering. The physician Galen documents her research. The asp story, the beautiful death by snakebite, the basket of figs, the drama was Roman propaganda. A story designed to fit the narrative of the exotic temptress destroyed by her own nature. More likely, she used a poison she had prepared specifically for this contingency. Fast, controlled, on her own terms. She did not give him the triumph. After her death, Octavian turned to the one thing he still needed to destroy: the heir, the last living proof that another world had almost existed. After her death, Octavian had Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar, the last legitimate Ptolemaic heir, killed. Caesarion was 17, the son of Julius Caesar, the only surviving Ptolemaic heir. The boy who, in another world, might have been the living bridge between Rome and Egypt his mother had spent her life trying to build. Octavian had him killed within days of her death. One advisor reportedly gave the order its justification. Too many Caesars is not a good thing. One sentence, one afternoon. A dynasty 300 years old ended not in battle, not in the fall of a city, in a quiet room while Octavian was still counting his grain. And then, Octavian did something no conqueror had ever done. Something that tells you everything about how much he feared what Egypt represented. He did not make Egypt a standard Roman province. He made it his personal property. Egypt fed Rome, every bushel of grain that kept the capital from revolution. Augustus governed it through his own prefect, off limits to Roman senators and generals. A private empire within the empire. No Roman of rank could enter Egypt without his personal permission. He was terrified of what Egypt meant to whoever controlled it, of what another Cleopatra could do with it. And then he made one final move, the one that didn't require a fleet or an army, the one that lasted 2,000 years. The poets went to work. Horace, Virgil, Propertius. The Eastern Temptress, the whore of kings, the woman who corrupted Roman virtue with Eastern excess. The story that has persisted for 2,000 years, through Plutarch, through Shakespeare, through Elizabeth Taylor, constructed within years of her death by men paid by the man who killed her son. Not one sword, a pen, and it worked. Here is who Cleopatra actually was. The last ruler of a 300-year dynasty. The first in that dynasty to speak to her subjects as fellow Egyptians. A woman who inherited a bankrupt client state, an impossible political situation, a throne contested by her own family. And held it for 21 years using every tool available to her. She made two alliances with the two most powerful Romans of the era. The logic of both was sound. The second one failed because she backed a man who was politically outmatched. That was the miscalculation. One in 21 years of correct ones. She died at 39 by choice, denying Octavian the spectacle he had planned for years, on her own terms. Her tomb has never been found. The most famous woman from the ancient world, whose face has been reproduced more times than almost any other human being in history, is buried somewhere beneath Alexandria or its outskirts, in a location no archaeologist has ever located. She is still missing. Rome wrote a story about a seductress who destroyed great men. The historical record shows a ruler who kept a dying civilization alive longer than anyone had the right to expect, against the most powerful empire in history, with almost no advantages except her own intelligence. She just ran out of moves. Here's the one that keeps me up. If Cleopatra had backed Octavian instead of Antony, if she had read that situation correctly, do you think she could have kept Egypt independent? Drop it below. Next, the question that has divided historians, archaeologists, and believers for 150 years. Archaeologists went looking for evidence of the Exodus. What they actually found is far more interesting than either side of that debate will tell you.